I work with the buyer who got an upper hand in a negotiation before we even left the condo. Not because of the price, not because of the building, because of what was hanging in the closet. Buyers start noticing things the moment they walk in, and some of those things might compromise your negotiating position. There are 5 specific things that might tip your hand, and I'm going to walk you through all of them. I'm Mark with KelownaCondos.ca and RE/MAX. This video is for anybody who's getting ready to list their condo or even just thinking about it, because the decisions you make before the first showing matter more than most sellers realize. Let's get into it. The first one is your pets, and this one might upset you. You've lived with your pet for years, so you might not notice if there's a pet odor. And if there is an odor, buyers will notice it the second they walk in. Close to 20 years ago, I went over to a seller's house to talk about selling and what the market was currently doing. We toured the home, we went through my presentation, and then we started going through the price. They asked me, is there anything that you think we could do to help with the sale? Now, this was a nice older home, but as soon as I walked in the door, I was hit with this overwhelming smell of cats. Literally, my eyes hurt. So as we were touring though, I noticed that the litter box, it was directly under the furnace's air intake. So I commented them on how nice their house was and how everything looked great. I said there was one small thing that they could probably do that would help, and that would be to move the litter box. I mentioned that it's directly underneath the air intake and it's carrying the smell of the cat litter throughout the house. Well, let me tell you, that was the wrong thing to say. One of the sellers actually got up off the table and walked over and sat on the couch. And from the couch, she mentioned that the other agent that they had come through, they didn't say that. As you could probably imagine, I left the home shortly thereafter. But the fact that the other agent didn't mention it, it doesn't mean the odor wasn't there. Pet odor can be a huge turnoff. It's not that buyers dislike animals. A lot of them have pets too. The issue is that every person I've toured through a property that has a pet odor, they don't think that the smell's going to come out. Before you list, have somebody that'll give you honest feedback. If there is an odor, you might want to have the carpets professionally cleaned. Also, before showings, remove the litter box, the food bowls, and pet toys. If there are scratches on the hardwood or chewed baseboards, you should address them. Buying a home is an emotional process. The goal is simple. Buyers should be focused on your condo, not the pet. And this thing brings me to my second item, which this one isn't just an opinion. Showings, they're going to bring strangers into your home, and that's just the reality of selling. Addiction is real, and it causes people to do things they normally wouldn't do. So you want to make sure that you put away all your medications before any showing. In all my years doing this, I've never personally had a client report something got stolen during a showing, and buyers that I'm working with, they're not going to be going through your drawers. But I've read enough stories online to know that it can happen, and medications are one of the more common targets when it does. This is such a small step, and it costs you nothing. The same principle, though, it also applies to other valuables. Jewelry, watches, cash, small electronics. You should just put them away. Also, your personal journals, photos, anything private. I'm not saying that buyers are snooping, but they could be, and you don't want to find out the hard way. But there's the third category, and this one I actually see all the time. Financial documents. Your realtor's market analysis showing that you priced it higher than your realtor recommended, or any real estate paperwork that you left on the desk. The last one is more common than you think, and it can be costly. If a buyer spots documents showing that you've already purchased your next property, they might think that you're highly motivated to sell because you don't want to own 2 homes. And whether this is true or not, it's going to change how they approach the negotiations. And again, I'm not saying that buyers are flipping through these documents, but I've seen contracts just sitting on the table. You also want to remove personal documents before any showing, not just financial ones, all of them. Now, speaking of what buyers see and read, let's talk about the photos on your walls. When a buyer walks through your condo, their goal, consciously or not, is to picture themselves living there. Family photos on every wall, shelves full of personal keepsakes, art that's deeply meaningful to you, all of it makes that harder. I even had a client once who looked at a photo, didn't like the seller, and automatically wanted to leave. They would never buy a home from that person. There's also the privacy angle, and this is worth considering. A child's name on a bedroom door, photos that reveal details about your household. These details might show up in the listing photos, and they could be a security risk. You never know. A showing should feel like a neutral, welcoming space, not somebody else's home. So you want to pack away the personal items before you list. And if personal items can soften your position, the next one is something that you might not even think of. Here's something that experienced realtors always notice. There are 2 owners on the listing, but the primary closet, it shows only one person's clothes. One side of the closet is full, the other side is empty. That could be a signal. Empty hangers, a single toothbrush, one side of the bathroom counter is bare. These details, they tell a story about motivation, whether it's a job transfer, a life change, or another personal situation. The evidence in the closet, it tells a buyer that there may be urgency to sell. And when a buyer feels that there could be urgency, it almost always lowers the maximum price that they're willing to pay for the home. So before you list, you want to stage the closets and the bathrooms so they look balanced. Fill in any gaps, remove toiletries completely, or add them to both sides. Your personal situation is private, and it should stay that way. This isn't deception. It's simply removing personal information from an emotional, financial transaction. The condo should speak for itself, which it brings me to my last thing, and honestly, this one has probably killed more sales than anything else on the list. Before I tell you this last one, I wanted to remind you that I specialize in one thing: Kelowna Condos. If you want honest, specific breakdowns of this market every week, hit subscribe. So the biggest mistake a seller can make is being present during the showings. I understand the instinct. It's your home. You know every detail. You want to answer the questions. But here's what really happens when a seller's home. Buyers feel uncomfortable. They rush through. They don't linger in rooms that they like. They avoid talking to each other and their agent because they don't want to say anything critical in front of you. And then, almost always, the seller says something that costs them. It usually starts with, "Do you have any questions?" "Oh, when are you looking to close?" "We're hoping to close quickly." "We've had a lot of offers, but nothing's worked out." That's negotiating leverage handed directly to the agent and the buyer. Or worse, you just told the buyer that your price is too high and you're hard to negotiate with. Your agent's job is to control the narrative. Your job is to let them. You should leave the unit. Let your condo make the impression. Buyers who feel comfortable, they're going to spend more time in a home. And the more time they spend, the stronger the connection. So here's what ties all 5 of these things together. Buying a home is an emotional purchase. Buyers gather information from the moment they walk through the door, and everything they see or smell, it can influence those emotions. A good example is IKEA. They don't make the most expensive furniture, but when you're walking through the showroom, everything looks great. This creates emotion and it makes you attracted to the furniture. You probably don't get the same feelings when you're downstairs in the warehouse. You are responsible for the emotion buyers feel when they walk through your condo. Remove the signals that suggest urgency. Remove the personal details that pull attention away from the unit, and remove yourself so the space can do its job. None of this requires expensive staging or major renovations. It requires intention before the first showing. If you want to know what your condo is currently worth in the Kelowna market, click the link at the top of the screen. I can put together an honest assessment based on what's actually selling right now. And if you'd like to talk about your timeline and what selling might look like for you, reach out. My booking link is in the description below. One last question before you go. Have you ever experienced any of these things when buying? Let me know in the comments. I read all of them.